find these things are actually unlinked. A person can be religious and moral or amoral. A person can be non-religious and moral or amoral. Every combination is possible. And once you get that, you can say to yourself, well, let's judge religion on its own merits. How do I know that there was this guy who died and sacrificed himself for our sins? It doesn't even make sense. I'm sure I'll post a bunch of links up to videos. Elaborating on this. I mean, for instance, it's God decrees, because you disobeyed me, you get infinite punishment, which doesn't make sense, really. I remember having that question even back in the youth group days, and then sort of setting it aside. Who would deserve infinite punishment and eternal fires of hell? Like, you might deserve 1,000,000 years, maybe, or 1,000,000,000 years, but infinite years? The heck is that? And I constructed, the idea of it, but I essentially independently came to the conclusion, I think it was C.S. Lewis said, if the gates of hell are locked, they are locked from the inside. Which is to say, the people who go to hell insist on being there. They insist on not being, because they're just so sinful, they don't want to be anywhere near God, and so they stay there forever. But then it still seems kind of weird that there should be this one point at which all the people who are going to insist forever end up over there. And all the people who will not end up with perfect love for God. At some point comes either at your death or at Armageddon or something, and whoosh, becomes decided. That's weird. People can't change their minds 1,000,000,000 years later? For good or for bad? But then God sets up this thing, says, okay, you get infinite punishment, and then God sacrifices himself on the cross to pay for our sins. To save us from the punishment that God was giving us. This is the thing, if it were God and the devil was going to punish us, and then God, saves us from this external force over here, that makes sense. But if the devil only exists at God's behest, hell exists because God allows it to exist, then God has invented a punishment, and then saves us from his own punishment, but still condemns some people to infinite punishment, which is not fair. Furthermore, why was it necessary to kill himself, to sacrifice himself to himself, when he could just say, hey, I've decided to change the rules. Hey, I've decided you're forgiven down there. Stuff has changed. Science doesn't have with the Bible. The Bible says the world was created in 6 days. Science says no. There's a site called Answers in Genesis that tries to give all your answers to creation stuff. It's a good site, well designed and very thorough answers. But they still don't add up. All the answers that I've seen, I haven't looked at the whole dang site, but everything comes down to, well, if you assume that the Bible is true, then... And they try to make they put the Bible on the same level as science. They're like, well, assuming that the Bible is true is just like assuming that science is true, You're making an assumption. No, science doesn't make assumptions. We go with, okay, consciousness, cool, what's this? This is reality, apparently. Okay, reality, cool. What can we learn from that? Let's find out about this reality thing. And the evidence has led us to believe in evolution. But the Answers in Genesis site was saying, no, evolution is like an article of faith. Basically, I don't know, they called it a presupposition. There's some book called, The Ultimate Proof for Creation or something like that. And it starts by throwing out the idea of evidence. It starts with, I actually read, the first couple of pages of this. It was something evidence can be interpreted any which way. Some people interpret it for the Bible's side, and some people interpret it for science's side. So, we're gonna chuck all the evidence out now. We're gonna talk about really vague things and morals, I guess. Except morals themselves can also be derived from logical analysis. And yes, I admit that's rather hard. You can't just measure morality on some easy scientific scale, but nevertheless, we can have some idea about it. There was a movie, I think, called Collision. I haven't actually seen it, so I saw the trailer for it, though. And it's about two guys. One is very Christian. It's a true story, by the way. One is very Christian, and one is very atheist, and they went around the country having debates on religion. And in the trailer, the religious guy was saying to the atheist, what is your basis for morality? If you don't have a God to tell you things, you don't have any. I want you to answer this for me. You can't turn to public opinion, because that sways. You can't turn to the Bible, because you don't believe in that. You can't turn to, the law or something, because laws can be wrong. You list like several things you can't do. And I formulated the answer for that. This is like, the last few months I saw this thing. I said, well, what you're doing, Mr. Religious Guy, is you're throwing things into black or white, that everything must be perfect, absolute truth from God, or else it's total crap. You can't use any of these things. We can. They're just not perfect is all. We can say, okay, popular opinion says this, that's some evidence for that, Not perfect evidence, that's something. And certain laws or certain moral codes, by this, that, or any given people, it's probably indicative of something along the lines, because people, have minds of their own, and if they tend towards believing certain morals, and they have right reason for that. We perceive certainly good and evil in the world. We perceive happiness and sadness in a great variety of forms. We perceive that certain codes of conduct lead to more happiness, lead to more sadness. It's hard to measure these things, but you can take surveys, I suppose, or you can measure their brain waves if you felt like it. And yes, if you boil it down enough, you eventually say, okay, well, but why is happiness better than sadness? Maybe on the abstract universal scale of morality, somehow sadness is better or something. How would you know? All right, I'll admit that. That's kind of weird, isn't it? It kind of comes down to a hunch there. I have a hunch that happiness is better. You just based on a hunch there, huh? That's nothing. That's still technically something. It is. A hunch is a very small, low-level sort of evidence. But on this topic, it's the best that I've got. It's so much more comforting, to have an omniscient being tell you stuff. But it doesn't help to invent an omniscient being just so we can pretend we know things we don't really know for real sure. Just as we had an omniscient being back in the Old Testament tell us things like, X, Y, and Z foods are unclean. And it turns out, no, you actually can eat them. It's fine. There's another thing with Christianity, that we have, everything in the Old Testament, and then comes the New Testament, which apparently kicks out the Old Testament, basically. But some people like to think, no, the Old Testament, it's all still cool. They work together. But not really. There's a lot more warfare in the Old Testament, and God is, explicitly cool with that. Read some of Deuteronomy, it gets and then there's, turn the other cheek in the New Testament.